you want to learn a tune and like really learn it, listen to it a billion times. 2 minutes a day, every day, is better than 6 hours one day a week. The teacher can only show you what to do, but at the end of the day, you got to do it.
You came up when I was like doing some searching for like harmony ear training for
Yeah,
beginners.
I have some ear training videos that that are unusual. Let me put it that way.
Why are they unusual?
Well, probably the one that you saw. I'm guessing the one that you saw is the one that's like ear training exercises I did not learn in music school. There's there's one that I did like that it's probably one of my best viewed video. I don't know. I only have like 5 ear training videos, but that one by far has the most views, and even like 3 years later, it still gets a lot of play because what I did was I took regular ear training classes. I don't have perfect pitch. I took sight singing, where you just, and it's with movable dough, which I am adamantly in favor of. If anybody tries to do
Okay.
fixed dough, I will fight to the death over against fixed dough. um, but
But why would you? Why? Because I mean, obviously that's quite. Well, there are two schools of thinking, right? The movable dough or the fixed dough. Why do you
be,
prefer movable?
well, as a jazz musician, you have to be able to play. You have to be able to play any song in any key.
Mm-hmm.
And like the whole point of learning sight singing is to learn the relationships between the notes and to understand a key. And if you have to sing happy birthday in the key of C by going so la so do ti so la, and then it's the key of D, and suddenly you have to go la la ti la re do, like that is completely stupid and misses the point. Like you would have to learn the song once and you can play it in all 12 keys. But with
Yeah.
fixed dough, you have to learn the song 12 times, which is
Okay.
to me stupid.
That
So
just that's so. I only asked because actually I didn't learn sight singing. That was something that like really always held me back as a singer because I learned completely by listening, and I could only. I mean, I could hear it once. I was very good at pretending, so I would hear it once, and I would remember it, and I would always pretend like I could sight read. But when it came to actual choir auditions, where I genuinely had to sight read something, I couldn't. And I had no idea where I was going. So I find that's why I kind of wanted to get in touch with you and sort of, this whole importance of ear training in singers. I really noticed it held me back a lot, like having basically shit ear training, and being just in general having it being pretty terrible. But what I needed to put right at the beginning was thank you so much, Tim, for joining me tonight. And it's so lovely to have you join me today on the podcast and to have a chat about ear training and why it's important, especially for singers.
yeah, well, I mean, I think it's really important for anybody, singer, drummer, whatever. It doesn't matter, um, because what it really is it's understanding what you're hearing. That's what it really is. And um, first of all, yeah, thank you so much for asking me to do this. This is cool.
Firstly, can I just ask, like, who are you? Like, why are we talking about this together?
We're talking about this together because you asked me. That's
I
the
did, yeah,
short
exactly.
version.
That's true.
But we know each other because I'm a music teacher at the Bavarian International School
Mm-hmm.
in outside of Munich, Germany, and you have been teaching voice lessons there also for several years. And I've had the
Yes.
pleasure of screwing up some of the accompaniments to your students' recitals, which is
No, of
always a
being
blast.
amazing. I think
Well,
I honestly, I think all of the feedback is always like, oh my God, can Tim come back again? I'm like, I'm not Tim. I'm so sorry.
I mean, it's always fun. It's just that's like for me, it's like high stress because I never have time to learn any of the songs
Mm-hmm.
until like the day before or the day of. And so I'm generally writing cheat sheets, on a piece of paper, and just the problems arise when the student actually, if the student screws up and sings the wrong part, then I have to know where they are. And yeah, that's the stress. And but it's always fun. I mean, I love playing with like my students as well. Some of your students obviously are also students of mine
Yeah.
that were in my class at some point, sometime, and that's always just fun, to actually play real music with the students. So
Well, that's cool.
yeah.
I think it's sometimes quite. What I really like though about, I mean, it's terrible if they kind of if they muddle it all up and kind of don't know how to follow you. And I think that kind of brings us to the point of why it's important to do ear training, because if they had muddled it up, and then they should really know where you're going with it, or where where they are in the music by listening to it. But that's the whole point of being a beginner, right? You're kind of figuring all of these things out. But you said, that you think ear training is important for all musicians. And what would you say is, like, I suppose, to be honest, I've got really very little idea about ear training. I think I did the Aurelia thing at school. Do you know Aurelia?
Nope.
Oh, it's like it's it's the software from Australia. Actually, I mean, I thought it was pretty good. But that was kind of my introduction into ear training at school, and then everyone forgot about it. But I really wanted to ask you about what you think are some cool exercises, or where do you think people should start? Because obviously I'm talking to a lot of singers and it's mainly for singers, really, about where could people start with their ear training? What do you think is the most important thing for people to start with?
I hate to say it, but I think that, well, first of all, the reason I think I was good at ear training, like at the sight singing class when I got to school, like I had never done it before, but I was good at it. And I think the reason I was good at it was because I had played piano a lot. And I think to play, even if you're not going to be serious about an instrument, you have to have some way to visualize what you're hearing. I mean, like, I think for me, the piano makes so much sense because to the right is up, to the left is down, and like all the different intervals in between, plus the way the keys are organized. Once you know it, you can associate the things that you know with your ear with something that you know visually.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me, ear training is essentially, it's the same thing as, if you think of like learning a language. I always tell this, like especially when I'm teaching. I'm a jazz musician, in case your listeners don't know. I'm a jazz vibraphonist, and I teach a lot of musicians, who are aspiring improvisers. And I have had people contact me for like ear training lessons and things like this. And to me, it's kind of like you have to think of it like learning a language, right? When you're learning a language, first you learn the alphabet. You learn like the basic sounds like b and k and duh, and
Mm-hmm.
and then you put it together, and then you form words like mom and dad or whatever, and then you learn how to form sentences. I mean, it takes a long time to do that, before somebody can talk, and then before somebody can speak eloquently is an even longer time. And I hate to like break people's hearts, but that is kind of the same process with ear training. But if you go about it in a methodical way, I think it's really possible to make clear improvements. So I would start with a major scale, like little bits of ear training, like memorizing sounds. It's like remembering little songs. Like if you can remember what a song sounds like in your head to the point where like you hear it and you know what it is. Well, if you also knew not only what the song is, but what the notes were, and like could play it on an instrument, you would automatically have more information. So your brain would take that leap from like, well, I heard it and I know the song. I know that it's like Oye Como Va or whatever. But if you've ever played it on an instrument, then you know that it's actually okay, A, D, C, D, A, whatever,
Yeah.
and just by hearing it, your brain can make all those leaps and get to the end result. And then, so it's like you need the knowledge to fill in the gaps. Like, I think very few people, with the exception of maybe like Rick Beato's son, can
Oh, he's
just,
amazing.
yeah. But Rick Beato also trained him to do that, like taught him all the theory. Like it wouldn't happen in a vacuum, right? You can't.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a lot of people have that sort of hearing ability to like identify sounds, but if you don't know what it is you're trying to, or nobody points out, hey, that's a B flat major 7 chord, you're not going to know to make that association. So you need to have the knowledge, sometimes in some cases before you might even hear it,
Okay.
I
So
think.
yeah, wow, it sounds good. Do you would you say that then, like, especially do you just start then with singers? Because I know you do on your YouTube channel, you do a couple of videos of like ear training for singers, and I did watch a couple of them. You were talking about like trying more difficult interval patterns and kind of going da 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 and doing that. would you just start with like a really basic major scale and then work out that basically you can sing all of the intervals at any point on any of them, the major scales? Is that where you sort of begin?
Yeah, I mean, maybe for some people that works. I think it's also kind of a good idea. But yes, that principle is a great one, and that's actually that is exactly one of the things I explained in one of those videos. Just like you need to memorize what a major scale sounds like, and the best way to do that is to like test every possible, like think of it as a series of buttons, and you want to be able to push any button and just the note, or somebody else pushes a button and you're like, oh, that's the sixth, okay, I can tell, oh, that's the second. But then you want to be able to organize it into chords, so that can be quite tedious. So maybe a good way to get into that is to sing a tune first, like sing the chord progression of a song, heart and soul. Do mi la do fa la so ti. It's also the 1 6 4 5 chord progression.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe it's better to start with a song. Like there's a famous saying by Miles Davis: play it first and talk about it later. And it's much easier for people to make these connections when you kind of already know it in your head. So
Okay.
if you know the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow, for
Mm-hmm.
example, like then all the intervals of a major scale if you can sing that song. So you just have to memorize which one is which, you
Mm-hmm.
know? and and it's probably easier to start with a piece of music just because that's like a larger piece of information that people can grab onto and they can remember more. And then you can go back and say, okay, that first part, well, that's an octave somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
the next part, that's, T, sol, la, ti, do, and then back down the octave. And yeah, so find some tunes that are diatonic, sing the chords, sing the bass notes, sing the melody, sing all of it at the same time if you can. And probably that's going to get you a really long way, just because so much music is very diatonic without a lot of key changes anyway.
Okay.
So.
I mean, that sounds like it's going to take some people though like quite a while.
Yeah, this is yeah. You have to remember, I've been working on this stuff for like 15 years, and sometimes I just, I spout out, yeah, just sing all the chords, It's like
No,
it's
I
something
just
that.
love that you're like dos and see I because I never learned the solfege. That just I mean I know what you're talking about. I know it because I'm a big Sound of Music fan. So but apart from that, I mean, to be honest, apart from like touching on, I mean, I know the concept of solfege and things like that, but, would you say that's a great way for people to kind of access ear training and, well, music theory and ear training? Or if you've never done it before, would you say just like leave it alone?
I do think it's a great way because it forces you to assign some sort of a value to each part of the scale. And if you learn some typical chord progressions, for example, a 4 chord song, right? A
Okay.
4 chord song, which is like
Yes.
99.9% of pop songs,
I was going to say every pop song on the planet. Yeah.
right? But sometimes they can be tricky to figure out because depending on what order they are. But the 4 chords are pretty much without fail. It's always going to be the 1, the 4, the 5, and the 6
Mm-hmm.
in some order. But sometimes they do it in such a way where the 6 sound, if they're in the minor, which is the relative of them, then you would actually be calling the 6 the 1, but in my
Mm-hmm.
mind, I still call it the 6 because it's much easier to relate. I think that's a big part of ear training, honestly, is to just listen to us. Like if you want to learn a tune and like really learn it, listen to it a billion times, because then you don't have to change. Because if you sing a minor scale starting on do, like do re mi fa sol la ti do is the intervals of a major scale. But if you have the flatted third, the flatted sixth, and the flatted seventh, then you have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, te, do, which is super confusing. And I'm sure I lost all of your listeners just then, possibly even you. So I apologize.
Especially no, you don't have to apologize. It's just because I keep forgetting that with the flattened one, it's then you use the A, and with the sharp you use the E, right? Like then it's me.
Well, yeah, it's super confusing. No, I'm not gonna. We should. So me is the third, right?
Yeah, true. You go do re
Me is the major
mi.
third. So the minor third is May, do re mi.
Do re mi.
So
And then
if
you
it's
would have
if
do
it's
re mi fa. Then you would have fi, right?
Fi would be F sharp.
F
That's like the
sharp, right?
sharp version of Fa.
Yeah.
And then Sol, and then La, which would, if you wanted to flat La, then it's Lay. If you want to flat T, then it's Te.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't go Li?
If you were making an A sharp,
Yeah.
then yes, you would.
Okay.
But I almost never use it. Yeah, this is like music theory nerd stuff for sure here. I don't know how much your listeners want to hear this.
I mean, I can always review these things. But
you can edit it out. You can edit it out. It's okay. I don't mind.
It sounds really, honestly, it sounds super interesting. I mean, to be honest, like I've really got no idea about that stuff. It kind of, sometimes it makes me feel like a terrible musician because I don't know about that sort of stuff.
Nah, I mean, I think also numbers, you could just do it on numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's also fine. But also it doesn't matter if there are plenty of very successful musicians that do not know about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The main point of ear training is just, you got to know when what you're hearing is off, or you have to just be listening to the point where you can find something that you are doing that fits with what's going on behind you, right? Even if you don't know what it is, that's the main thing. Like it's a yes or no question. What am I doing? What are other musicians doing behind me, and do they fit together? Yes or no?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate question of ear
Mm-hmm.
training, and that's easily done, I think, by most musicians.
To me, I think that's, as you say, I suppose a lot of people wouldn't even think about that as ear training. You just think about that as like, learning your instrument, right? But then I suppose it's like improvisation is a lot to do with how well can you hear your note within the chords that are being played.
Sure, but I mean, sometimes you don't know what chord is being played, and
Mm-hmm.
and you're just like, I don't know, here's a note, does this sound good? I don't know. If it doesn't, then change it to something else. But if you don't notice, then that's the problem, right? If you just think, or if you have no idea if it fits or not,
Mm-hmm.
that's I think especially with young kids, just like teaching them to trust that like inner ear thing, because I think most kids can do this. I used to do ear training stuff when I would teach 6th grade. I mean, now I have older students, but like my 6th grade class, we would do ear training, and I would tell them, okay, I'm only going to play, it's going to be either C, D, E, F, G. The first one is always going to be a C, and I'm going to play 5 notes, and all you got to do is just like write out the rest of the notes. And I'd tell them, and they'd all be like, what, how can you do that? Nobody can do that. And then we'd try it like 5 times, and most of the class could do it. So, you just have to do it step by step and build it up. Like you have to give students guidelines. Like I'll say, I mean, if I were to be just like lean on the piano and be like, name the notes, like nobody could do that. But
apart from Rick Beatta's
apart from Rick Beatta's exactly. But
I will admit, I do get lost down the rabbit holes of his son Dylan, like going, yes, it's a B flat major 5 flat something or other. It's like,
I think that's a big part of ear training. Honestly, is to just listen to us. Like if you want to learn a tune and like really learn it, listen to it a billion times. Take away the time consuming hard work. And I hate to tell you, everybody, it's not going to happen. Like you got to put in, like, if you really want to be great at playing music, you are going to have to invest yourself fully in it, because there's no way to get good at playing music without practicing. The teacher can only show you what to do, but at the end of the day, you got to do it.
The first note, and they can sing all of the scales. What would be like step 2 in their ear training journey?
I think, well, so I'm coming at this from a jazz musician, right? So I play a lot of tunes that have modulations in them. So I mean, I want to be able to hear when the key changes and how the key changes and where it's going and how. So I actually devised a couple exercises. I think some of these are in, maybe I didn't put these in a video yet, but at some point, I don't know when, this is not like a public announcement, but someday I'm going to have an online ear training course that people will be able to get. So I don't know, maybe 5 years from now, or maybe next year. I have no idea. Yes, I think that mastering the harmony of a major scale is like step 1. So that includes being able to sing chord progressions, not just any note on this on the scale, but to be able to build a triad or even a 4-note chord from any note on the scale. So
Okay.
like if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, okay, the 1 chord is da da da, the 4 chord is da da da, the 2 chord is da da da, the 5 chord is da da da, right? So to be able to just pick those out, but then to be able to insert secondary dominants. So instead of the 2
Okay.
chord being a minor, suddenly now the 2 chord is a major. So this is where if you were doing it on solfege, right? So 1 would be do mi so, 4 would be fa la do, 2 would be re fa la. But if you want to make that a major, it'd be re fi la. That's where you'd use the fi,
Okay.
right? So that's a secondary dominant. This is again theory, but
So what is a secondary dominant for someone who doesn't know what that is?
okay. So a dominant chord is a 5 chord that goes to a 1.
Okay.
But what a secondary dominant is a chord that temporarily makes some other chord besides the 1 sound like the 1.
Okay.
So if I go da 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 da, that sounds like 5 1, but it's really 2 5 because this is 1. So
Okay.
that's what it is. So it's a secondary. It's a dominant chord that's just going not to the 1, but some other chord. And all you have
Okay.
to do is change a major to change a minor chord to a major chord to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's that. I mean, but that's not a full-on modulation. Modulation is when you just completely change key, right? So
Mm-hmm.
do, where we were, here's do. I don't even know what note that is. I don't have perfect pitch either. It's probably like in between some
My
notes.
keyboard's off. I'm sorry.
That's more fun to speculate. Just go with it. So to demonstrate a modulation would be like do mi so fa la do re mi re fa la so ti do mi so la, and let's say that's the 6, but I'm going to make it a 5 and I'm going to make the 1, so la da da da. Now that's do mi so fa la da. So I just
Okay.
modulated up a whole step
Mm-hmm.
for anybody at home whose eyes have not rolled all the way back to their skull.
I think to be honest, that's actually that's incredibly challenging. But
It
so
is.
basically you're saying to, not just to take the chord. So speaking to people who maybe didn't catch what you were meaning. To be honest, I think
Which is
the
probably
dough
everybody.
thing. I think to be honest, I mean the dough thing definitely. Like I get what you're meaning. I get where it is. But the idea basically that you're, well, I mean songs modulate, don't they? So if you're
Mm.
making sure that you can actually sing the chords, even if you do, even if you are changing the key and kind of saying, I do this a lot with my students without realizing that's what you were meaning. And I like push any note on the piano and I have them sing the chord that I've asked them to sing.
Mm.
So is that kind of what you were saying?
I mean, yeah, there's so many roads to get to that place. And
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a singer, right? So I'm coming to all this stuff from the
Mm-hmm.
point of view of someone who played it on a keyboard instrument. So I mean, the other fact of the matter is that like if you've played it a billion times on a piano, the chances are like even if you've never opened your mouth to sing before, the chances are pretty high that you'll be able to do this,
Yeah.
which kind of goes to the point earlier that like if you really want to get good at this, if you really really want to do it, you have to play piano. You just
Okay.
have to. Like it's really difficult to do it, or I mean you have to at least understand the piano, right? You have to know how the piano works even if you can't play it that well. You just have to understand how it works.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I mean, this is also, I mean, this is something that for jazz musicians it's very important. For someone who is maybe playing like rock and pop tunes and wants to write original compositions, for a singer songwriter, I don't think this level of, I mean, the more you can do, the better of a musician you'll be, clearly, but it's not like this is make or break. Like, it's not like you have to do this in order to be a professional musician. You don't. But
No,
if you
I
want to
don't
be a
think.
better musician, it can help for sure.
See, I don't. This is. Yeah, I would say it's not. You don't have to. Obviously, I'm sure that there's singers out there that don't know how to do that. I think what it does make you good at though is it makes you better at improvising, and it makes you, and in rock and pop, I mean, hopefully some people will want to do a bit of improvising, and I just kind of have the feeling like at the moment in a lot of pop music, it's just all about riffs and runs. And if you want to build cool riffs and runs, I mean, you've got to be good. You've got to improve your ear training.
True. But that's also there's a lot of riffs and runs in jazz also. I'll just throw that out there.
Oh my
But
God, absolutely. Like, I mean, it's incredible. But I think the difference is, especially with jazz, is like you guys practice how to improvise and practice how it all goes together, and like practice how to come up with those things on the spot. Whereas I feel in pop and rock, I mean, musical theater doesn't have any improvisations, but in pop and rock, you would practice it in advance and it's not going to go anywhere that you haven't already assumed it's going to go. I mean, you don't have all of the kind of the cool things that happen in jazz.
I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, I wasn't trying to be snarky before when I said that. I was basically agreeing with you, actually.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah. I mean, actually, you'd be surprised at in jazz there is a great deal of. I'm not going to say it's like I'm planning on playing certain riffs at certain points in a solo or something, but depending on the tune, if there's some tune that's like, there are some tunes where I know that there's only one or two things that I know that I can do to get through a couple of the chord changes, and that's okay because it's a language, right? We use words all the time over and over again, but they don't always come out exactly the same, and that's still okay. It's not like improvisation has to be completely reinventing the wheel every single time. It's it's a language, and we're just talking. We're just exchanging ideas or whatever. And
and if it's incorrect, then who cares?
right,
So.
or you just say, "Oh, Entschuldigung bitte."
Do you then okay, so the people have gone, we've gone out, we've learned the major scale, and we've learned the chord progressions and stuff like that. Is it then just about, like I suppose in a lot of jazz, is it about then just playing with other people and, seeing where you fit into that? Or do you, I know ear training is like your jam. What would be sort of like another exercise that someone could do? I think it's so cool.
Oh man. Well, I mean, if you really want to do like crazy stuff, I mean, first of all, if somebody goes out and has done the ear training to the point where they have mastered, major scale, and the minor scale by extension, then you've probably got, I mean, my last semester sight singing class, I think like we had 4 semesters. The first semester was all diatonic. It was all major scale. The second semester was like, oh, we have one secondary dominant. The third semester was like, we're going to have a key change. And the fourth semester was more like singing weird shapes, and it was less tied to a tonality.
Okay.
But I still, like, for me, I mean, atonal sight singing, for me, I can't do it. I can only sing intervals really when I have the context of some type of chord. I know how to sing weird chords, but that's because I've played a ton of weird chords, so I know how they sound. And those weird chords always occur in context. And so there's a before chord and an after chord. I use this example actually when somebody is singing the scale. If you're singing all the chords of a scale, the last one is a diminished chord. Right now, if you were to do it in context, you'd be able to sing the diminished chord. But if I were to say, "Hey, Zoe, can you sing a diminished chord?" Or not you, but like just anybody, if I say, "Can you sing a diminished chord?" It's really, really hard for people. But then if you've like sung the whole scale and you've gone up each scale degree, singing all the triads, the diminished chord, it's really easy to hear because the notes are all kind of ringing in the air. You've sung them all just at a different in a different order. And so to me, context is really important. So to sing like an augmented triad, I would probably have to be thinking of a minor key, and that's the 5 chord with a flat 13 or something. And that's how I would find it. But to sing it out of thin air is a lot more difficult.
Okay.
If that makes sense. But yeah, I didn't really answer your question though.
No, honestly, so I find this stuff, to be honest, the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this is because I just found it so so limiting, to be honest, as a musician when you, and well, as a singer, that, you know, dabbles in the guitar and the piano, that it's really challenging to be able to change keys really quickly and to, you know, to improvise with the singing and to kind of make the song your own if you don't have a good understanding of what's going on and with the ear training. And that's why I thought it was so important as well that we, you know, get together and have a chat, because I think that a lot of people are kind of wondering, okay, well, ear training, how do I do it?
Yeah. I mean, right. That's sort of how I came up with all those insane exercises on that one YouTube videos, because I had a very specific problem I was trying to solve. And that problem was, what happens when I get on stage at a jam session with my vibes and people call a tune that I don't know, and I'm standing there and I got to play. So what do I do? And the answer is, I wanted to be able to just listen and hear. Like, I wanted to be able to not have to just not have to look at the piano player, not have to ask the trumpet player, hey man, what key are we in? I just wanted to be able to listen to the tune, you know. And usually when you're standing on the bandstand, especially if it's a jam session, you have a lot of choruses before it's your turn to solo, especially if there's a, you know, a line of saxophone players out the door, which often was the case in New York City. So I would have, you know, 32 times or whatever to listen to this tune go by and try to figure out, all right, so the A section is a 1-6-2-5 in the key of B flat, but then the second A goes to E flat major in the last bar, and then the bridge is like D. What's going, you know? And I would have this amount of time to figure it out, and then, you know, everybody's done soloing, and then it's like, well, okay. And I wanted to be that quick that I could pick out what the chord progression was for any given tune. And also I wanted to know, if I'm comping, if I'm playing the chords for somebody who's taking a solo, I want to know exactly, because there are many different ways to play over the same set of chord changes in jazz, and some of them involve intricacies that it's possible I could clash with if I play the wrong chord voicing. And so I wanted to be able to hear, okay, is the saxophone player, is he going to play a flat 9 or a natural 9 or a flat 13 or a natural 13 over that C7 chord or whatever? And then I could play a chord that would fit with it. And you have to be really quick to be able to hear that stuff. And so those were the problems that I was trying to solve with my sort of self-made ear training exercises. And so I would do, one of the things I did was I took a mini disc player, this is back in 1999, took a mini disc player and I recorded myself playing every possible type of chord, like every possible type of seventh chord. So, you know, major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, minor 7 flat 5, major with a minor 7, but minor with a major. Yeah, I'm losing all your audience again. Whatever. I recorded all the tracks, and then I put it on random.
Okay.
And then played along with it on the vibes. And I was like, I need to, like, as soon as the chord would change, I didn't know what chord I could be on the C major, and the next chord coming would be like F sharp half diminished or something, you know. And I wanted to be able to like improvise over this and hear the chord change and just like seamlessly connect whatever I was playing. And so that was one of the things that I came up with. You know, that didn't involve singing, but it was definitely ear training, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah, be creative. That's my advice.
That's so cool. Well, I mean, be creative is I think what a lot of people are missing these days. I think a lot of the time they kind of go, yeah, hey, you know, I want to sing like Beyonce, or I want to sing like Billie Eilish. And actually, I think the creativity comes when you take those songs and you kind of try and make them your own and come up with your own versions of the licks and the runs and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's an identical conversation that gets had in jazz as well, because, you know, in jazz you're supposed to quote unquote find your own voice. And my feelings on the matter are that you don't have to actually try to do that. Like, I mean, so you say people want to sing like Billie Eilish. Of course they want to sing like Billie Eilish. I wanted to play like Milt Jackson, right? And I know a lot of his solos note for note. I can play them. But I guarantee you, I walk out on stage, I play a note for note Milt Jackson solo. No one is going to think that it's Milt Jackson, even if I do everything exactly the same. And the reason is because it's not possible to actually copy it. And I would do that. I do it out of, I just love his music. So I don't care. Like I don't feel like I'm suppressing my own identity because I love Milt Jackson so much. I'm just like thinking to myself, this guy speaks a language that I want to speak. And so, if you want to speak a language, you got to go out and talk to the natives. Like, you speak perfect German, better than mine for sure. And we're here in Germany. And, and if you really want to learn German, you got to go hang out with a bunch of Germans and speak German. Like that's the way to do it. And I think there's nothing wrong with, I sometimes have students in my class who want to sing a song and they want to sing, it used to be Adele was like, I could immediately hear like they would open their mouth and sing one note and I'd be like, yep, Adele. Okay. And I think that's fine because you need that inspiration to like get you to be inspired enough to want to do that, right? Like it takes a lot of work to try to sing like Billie Eilish or to try to sing like Beyonce. And then when students realize, well, I tried to sound like Beyonce, but I don't really sound like Beyonce, then that's like, okay, you have reached step 2, which is like, take what you learned from singing like Beyonce or trying to, and now just like, I don't know, relax and don't worry about it so much and see what comes next. And I had a teacher who actually described it perfectly. He said, we try and fail to emulate our heroes. And that's actually how you find your own voice.
That's such an awesome idea.
That's Joe Locke, my teacher. That's his quote. Or I don't know where he got it, but I hear him say it. So
that's amazing.
Because it's really good, right?
Funnily enough, that's actually, I have a lot of students who are like completely obsessed with Billie Eilish, and she's an amazing fan.
I love Billie Eilish.
She's wonderful.
Yeah.
And she even said in a video, she was watching like people's reactions to her videos. So it was a bit weird. It's like kind of like 3 versions of the same thing. And one of the people said, oh, she sounds when she sang her Oceanized song right at the beginning. One of the people's criticisms was, oh, she just sounds like every other pop singer. And she said, well, yeah, I did sound like every other pop singer. I was 14. I didn't have my own voice. I was like obsessed with all these singers and I was trying to do what they were trying to do. And then through that, I ended up like developing kind of what I consider to be my sound. But she was like, yeah, of course, but that's not bad. Like I was just, I was doing what I really wanted to do and I wanted to try and sound like them. And we learn how to play and how to sing and how to do what we're doing through emulating the people that we love. I don't see anything wrong with it. I just think for me, I always try and get, we learn how to do riffs and runs by reading the notes on the paper that Christina Aguilera did paint, music notes. Sometimes they write it out exactly as it was, which is really helpful actually. Because then you can learn, okay, that is Yeba's amazing little run there. And then how can I change that, or when you get used to it? But then that comes into the ear training. Can you hear the differences, the opportunities to move the harmony around and to move your scales around?
Yeah, I think actually you're right with when a pop singer's song gets notated and sold as sheet music, and you see this just like insanely complicated looking rhythms. But it is cool because it can help people really visualize the actual nuance of melody. And that's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, on the vibraphone, I have tried to do that. Like I've tried to imitate singers on a vibraphone, which is, I don't, if your listeners don't know, it's basically a xylophone, but way cooler. Just think of it like that. You've heard it before. It's in the theme song to Sex and the City and all this other stuff, but people don't know the name. But to make an instrument like that, when somebody sings a melody, they don't go da 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 da. It's not just note note note. It's like da 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 da. There's those little movements. I probably should not sing on this podcast anymore.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'll see what I think when I listen back later. But but yeah, those little melodic embellishments that are so common in, amazing vocal performances. I often I would often I try as much as I can to draw a parallel between Billie Holiday or Nina Simone, with basically any pop singers today for my students, just because I have a couple students at the school that are really into hip hop and R&B, and
Mm-hmm.
they've shared with me the music that they are into, and it's really good stuff. It's not like the cookie cutter pop stuff, the super popular stuff. It was
Yeah.
all stuff that's like kind of underground, and I liked it a lot. And I think I always, every single time I hear one, I'm like, oh, well, that vibrato. I mean that's Billie Holiday. That's what that is. And I try to. Have you ever heard "God Bless the Child" by any chance? Or Nina Simone singing "I Put a Spell on You,"
Mm-hmm.
or I mean, really anything she sang. Just
She's
those,
amazing.
yeah, and to a lesser extent, maybe Ella Fitzgerald. Also, she's way more, a lot more jazzy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Billie Holiday, obviously, but Billie Holiday, Billie Holiday. If you listen to Florence and the Machine, I mean, it's totally obvious that the connection is there between Billie
Okay.
Holiday.
I don't think I've
So
ever thought about that actually between Florence and the Machine and Billie Holiday.
I think the first time I heard Florence and the Machine, I really, it just jumped out at me. And again, that was because of students at the international school, that they were
Mm-hmm.
into. This is 10 years ago. I've been teaching there for a while now. So Florence and the Machine, I don't know what they're up to now, but I was familiar with their music 10 years ago. So
Her, right? Like it's just her.
well, it was her band though. I mean, but I don't know.
Ah, okay.
She had a band. Maybe that was the
Is it just?
Machine.
I think
I don't
that
know.
I'm confused. I thought she was just. I thought it was just her was Florence. Maybe she had a band. Maybe it was like,
They did have a band because they toured and played in Munich.
yeah.
But yeah, oh, maybe the name only refers to her. I don't know. But
I know some singers do that, and they're like, Sabrina and the Seekers. I don't know. Two random words, but yeah. Okay, I never really thought about that connection between Florence and the Machine and Nina Simone.
yeah, I mean, maybe it's subconscious. I guess it's my point is also more that like, it was Billie Holiday that was the connection
Oh,
with,
sorry, Billie Holiday.
at least from my recollection.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, maybe Florence from Florence and the Machine, I forgot her last name. Maybe she listened to Bill Holiday. Maybe she
Mm-hmm.
didn't, but she probably listened to somebody who did listen to her.
Yeah.
And this whole style, it's a tradition that gets passed down. And yeah, I just think it's so important, especially for people that are into R&B, to go back and listen to the original,
Yeah.
just so there's a lineage. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lineage to where all this stuff is coming from. And it's just fascinating, and it's just a way to get into such a great variety of music that's timeless. So
I think it's really important to get into all of the, not just people who are interested in R&B, but like all music from today. I mean, it's obviously it's come from somewhere. So I always say to people, go back a little bit further. Go and have a look at the things that were in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and see maybe you've got that style in this person's that singer's voice that you really like today. Dusty Springfield is really, Adele sounds really similar to Dusty Springfield. And make those sorts of connections, and don't just go, okay, you're making a copy of a copy of a copy. And I think a lot of music today are like they're covers of like old songs anyway. We just don't realize that they're covers because
yeah,
because
yeah,
they're kind of the older versions have kind of gone out of fashion.
yeah, that's true. I mean, and that was true. I mean, Rolling Stones and Beatles had covers of tunes like that too, that
Yeah,
people associate with them now, but they're just cover tunes. So
exactly. And you kind of like look at it as well, and you sort of, oh wow, this person didn't actually write this song. You're like, well, yeah, that was written by, I don't know, a different as well. Actually, there's quite a I don't know. There's lots of singers that kind of like gave up with the singing thing and then just kept writing, and then couldn't. That they just didn't want to continue with it. I don't know.
yeah,
Preferred to quiet
there's
rest.
Carole King, who
Oh.
was writing hit songs when she was like 16 or 17,
Mm-hmm.
and then was like, okay, I guess I'll put out a record. And it's, one of the greatest albums of all time, Tapestry.
She's amazing.
Yeah, I'm a huge Carole King fan. There was a period in my life when I could play and sing all of Tapestry from beginning to end, like all of it, the whole thing. And not because I had practiced it. This actually ties back into ear training because
Okay.
I listened to the album so much. First of all, I would be sitting in traffic for 2 hours every day in New York City on my way to, teaching. And so I would listen to that album like every day, probably for a year. And I listened to it. I would sing the bass notes along with it. So I knew all the bass lines and I
Okay.
would sing all the melodies. And if you know the bass line and you know the melody, you can fill in the rest with,
Mm-hmm.
basic knowledge of harmony. And I swear I never practiced it, but I had listened to it so often that I could there was one point I could just sit down and just play the whole thing because I had listened to it so much that I knew all the intricacies of the tune.
That's
So
amazing. That's
yeah, so
incredible.
I
I
mean,
don't
but
think
I
I've
think
ever listened to anything for that long amount of time.
I think that's a big part of ear training, honestly, is to just listen to us. Like if you want to learn a tune and like really learn it, listen to it a billion times.
Mm-hmm.
But actively, I mean, I would be driving, so you can't be completely you have to be focused on the road, but I'd be singing the bass parts, singing different parts. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say besides the melody, the bass line is actually the next most important thing, if not more important, because the bass
Mm-hmm.
line will tell you what the chords are.
Okay.
So
And that's kind of like a way people can get into it. I suppose a lot of kids I always suggest that people sing the harmony over top of the singer and try and harmonize with the singer. But then again, you kind of have to have an idea about, does this fit? Does this
yeah,
work? Or you're just going to end up on one note and then it's going to be
yeah.
really boring harmony.
I think
um,
singing the bass notes is, first of all, it can be tricky to point out to kids like what is the bass note. First, they have
mm-hmm.
to know what it is, and sometimes you just play it for them, and then they're like, oh, yeah, I hear that. But yeah, if singing on top of that's a good idea too. The problem is if the melody, for example, if the melody is actually on the fifth
Mm-hmm.
of the chord already, and then you try to sing over it, you might end up on the major seventh, but maybe it's a dominant chord, so it should be a minor seventh.
Okay.
So I mean, you can try it, and depending on the melody, it will work really well.
Mm-hmm.
Depending, but yeah, I think singing bass lines is a great way to just learn tunes because there are cues in the bass lines that will tell you what's going to happen also.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can hear if the tune is going to modulate based on what the bass player does a
Yeah.
lot of times. And if you're not paying attention to it, you're never going to figure it out.
Yeah.
So it's good to pay attention to it. Maybe it's because my voice is kind of in a bass range and it's
Mm-hmm.
easier for me to sing the bass notes that I don't know that's why I got good at it. I don't know, but uh
I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, a female would just sing at the octave above.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I mean, you just, as you say, you just have to first be able to hear where that is and like what it is within it.
Mm.
But that's really cool. What would you say? So I mean, you have your YouTube videos and things, and you're eventually at some point, watch this space, going to come out with an online ear training course.
Yeah, I guess I have to do it now.
I think it's gonna sound amazing. Like this course, I want to do it already, and you haven't even brought it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I keep hearing stuff like that from people, then I will be much more quick to produce it. I've been working on an online jazz vibraphone course the past
Okay.
2 weeks, so that's been my project. But yeah, before the end of the year, I suppose there's a much wider market for ear training than there is for jazz vibraphone. But
I don't know. That's so funny that you say that because I've been working on for the last like 4 weeks my online singing course that I've been
mhm,
recording every
right,
day.
we're all working on online courses now,
I
but it's
think,
great.
and it's so funny because I think so many people said, "Oh, definitely missed the boat," and I thought there's so many people in this world
Yeah,
that there's always you come at it from a different angle. I'm going to come at it from a different angle, and you know, w- there's going to be a market for everything. I think.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
That's so
mean,
cool.
yeah, it's just it makes sense, and you just got to find the teacher that's right for you if you're a prospective student.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so funny that you say that because I think that's like the overarching theme of like every single person I've been chatting to. They're like, you've got to find the teacher that fits for you, but you've also got to find like your own individuality as a musician, which,
Yeah.
as we just said, comes through mimicking other people and finding what we like.
Yeah, I mean, you can't learn German without hearing some German.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, what was I going to say? There was something I was going to say along those lines that, at least for me, it's less about what exercises you do, and it's more about just like, do you do them?
Mm-hmm.
Because some people, I think, they want to find some magic potion that's going to like take away the time consuming hard work. And I hate to tell you, everybody, it's not going to happen. Like you got to put in, like, if you really want to be great at playing music, you are going to have to invest yourself fully in it, because there's no way to get good at playing music without practicing. And um, there's no way to get good at ear training without practicing, whether you're practicing just ear training or practicing on an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
To me, those are kind of one and the same. They should be one and the same. So when I'm playing vibes, I'm doing ear training because I'm constantly listening to what I'm playing and saying, oh, is that the right shape? Is that the right sound to mix with this? Is that what I'm doing? And sometimes I will actually try to sing something and then see if I can just play it, without thinking. But either way, it's all training, right? And it just,
Awesome.
the amount of time you put into it, that's
Mm-hmm.
the biggest change. The teacher can only show you what to do, but at the end of the day, you got to do it.
Oh, Dana, I'm so glad that you said that though, because I think that there's so many of these programs out there that are like, do this immediately, learn this, get better immediately, and I just think that it just really upsets me because it kind of makes people it sets up everyone in their mind that like music can happen instantaneously, and like this idea of like talent and that you're born with it or you're not born with it takes out that whole idea of actually it's just a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I think that's so awesome to just hear that completely like reinforced every single time, because it's hard work. It's about practice and about putting in the time in the end. And I'm a firm believer that anyone can do anything with music. And my parents are not remotely musical whatsoever, but I just was obsessed with it. And it just took that obsession to bring me into the world of music. You don't have to come from any particular musical family or anything like that in order to be successful.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I I don't know if you're familiar with Chick Corea, who is a great jazz pianist. He just passed
No,
away about a week
unfortunately.
and a half ago. He's one of the legends of jazz, and he in the pandemic he started. I mean, he had a YouTube channel, but in the pandemic he started doing like live streams from his YouTube channel. This is as if Miles Davis were to have a YouTube channel, and he very suddenly passed away a couple weeks ago. So I've been going back and watching a lot of his YouTube videos, and in one of them, somebody asks him, "How do you learn improvisation?" Like just a light
Just
question,
a just an easy
easy
question.
softball question, no problem. And his chick's answer was great. He's like, "Well, look, you don't a baby is born, the baby wants to walk, right? But you can't send him off to run a marathon when he's a baby. Like, he's got to learn how to crawl and fall down, but no matter how many times he falls down, he keeps getting up, and then he can walk, and then years later he maybe runs and goes a marathon." And the other thing that he said that I think was really, really important, and it was kind of an aside, but was, you need to set yourself up for success, right? So you need to learn improvisation, and this applies to anything, right? But I'm speaking from the um, vantage of improvising music, right? Improvising in music for a lot of people is just like this incredibly scary, nerve-wracking thing. And so you can't just be like, all right, here's Autumn Leaves, take a solo. and,
Mm-hmm.
and and then what? People are going to be like scared. You have to say, all right, here's three notes, just make up some rhythms, for like 2 seconds. See, you improvise, blah, blah, blah. And it really needs to, you have to set yourself up for success. And what Chick said, the way he phrased it, something along the lines of, if you set yourself up for such a big loss that's like so devastating that you're like, oh my God, that was horrible, I never want to do this again, then you're practicing wrong. That's what he said. And I fully agree with that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Unless you're just have this like just incredible determination and you're like, bring on the failure. But that's rare, I would say.
That's incredible though. And what a lovely way to think about it, of like that you've got to, I think that it's all about just making mistakes. That kind of all these things like really just bring like back to the point of like, I always just say, make mistakes, make them huge, make them big, and then we can, then we can do better and figure out why it was a mistake. But if you're not prepared to make mistakes and be confident in the, whatever, if I sing the wrong note, but it was like in the right voice quality, then how on earth can you learn? And I think that's what we unlearn as we get older, right? We get more self-conscious about making these mistakes, which children never have the problem with because they're learning everything from the beginning. And I suppose with ear training as well, it's about practice, time, and hours spent doing it.
Well, I mean, hours spent, but if you're like me and you lived in Brooklyn and worked in Westchester, then you have hours in the car. And so, I mean, it doesn't have to be like, okay, I'm going to sit down and work on ear training. Just when you're listening to music, try to pick out the bass notes. When you're walking down the street, when you're sitting on the subway, when you're stuck in traffic, when you're in the doctor's office waiting for your appointment and you have your earbuds in, try to sing the bass note or hum it to yourself or try to visualize it on a keyboard, anything. That kind of listening goes a long way. And I'm going to say something I'm sure that you also have said many times to your students. 2 minutes a day, every day, is better than 6 hours one day a week.
Yeah.
Like I don't care if it's for just 30 seconds, if you do just a little bit every day, it's got to be every day. And not like, don't be like, okay, Friday, that's ear training day. Like you're going to forget everything you learned, Sunday through Thursday or whatever, Saturday through Thursday.
I mean, sort of along those, I always say 15 minutes. I say 15 minutes. I mean, but I'm talking about like singing practice, 15 minutes a day is so much better because then at the end of the week, you end up with like your 3.5 hours or whatever you've done. And I'm horrific at maths. But then, you you end up with a whole bunch more time than if you just sat at home, doing, just saying, on Saturday I'm going to do 2 hours, and then you forget and then you feel shit about it and you lose the motivation. And I always say, actually, if you plan it in exactly the same time every single day, it makes it so much easier to motivate yourself to do it. Than trying to get over that hump of motivating yourself to do any of this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like when a baby's learning to walk, like they don't say, okay, Saturday, it's time for the baby to learn how to walk. Like, you would never learn if that was.
Yeah, exactly. So. It's all about building, and it's got to happen slowly as well. This sort of shit doesn't happen overnight. You can't just learn a major scale one week and then go the next week, God, why can't I sing this perfectly? It's about how much of time have you actually spent imagining it? What are the notes?
Yeah. Agreed.
I'm glad that we agree. That's so awesome. But thank you so much, Tim, for chatting with me about ear training. I think it's so important and so interesting. And I think especially coming from like both of our completely different backgrounds, it's still just as important, regardless of whether you're singing jazz, musical theater, pop, whatever, in terms of making music. It's important to know what's going on around you because you're not usually just standing there by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, music is all about community, right? And you're trying to connect with the people around you. And the best way to connect with them is to hear what they are doing and understand it and be able to respond accordingly. That at its core is what ear training is. So
there you go.
There you go.
Mic
Problem
drop.
solved. Yeah, mic drop.
But thank you so much, Tim. It's been so nice to talk to you. And
yeah, cool.
Have a lovely rest of your evening.